Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Monday. I hope you guys had a lovely weekend. I sure had, because look at this, what I tweeted before the weekend. Do you guys like to tap Underground Sea and win legacy matches? Nice, me too. I updated my 75s. La la la. Grixis, mid-range, Demir mid-range, Reanimator. Boom. Top 8 with Reanimator. Same 75. Boom. Final split with Reanimator. Same 75. Top 4 with Demir Tempo, same 75 as I talked about a few days ago. No magic there. And yeah, what do you know? That work I put in, certainly worth the investment, and I hope you will consider joining over there. I will only make more content going into Eternal Weekend. So yeah, what are you waiting for? I hope to see you over there. With that being said, let's look at what you're here for, which is the Legacy metagame, top 8 metagame, basically. So I always cover the 40 decks here on Metagame Monday from the 5 challengers during the week. That has been my focus. I could choose to go full data. I could choose to go top 16. I could choose to not use the smaller ones, but I enjoy the top 8. That's kind of what motivates me on my journey, getting more top 8s under my belt. So that's the decks that I want to look at. Let's look at the first column here, which is Graveyard. And I'm really happy to see this one shrink from the week before. I think a lot of decks have adapted like I requested. But let's first take a look at this deck here. So Demir Reanimator, I feel like the form it has found with Tamiyo's Bowmasters, Murktide's Barragoyfs in the 75, that is enough of a well-rounded deck that you both get your free wins and you get to play the kind of mid-range plan in the face of hate, if you draw, a certain part of your deck, etc. So I really recommend this deck. It's very hard to respect in a proper fashion. If you disrespect it, you can lose. If you over-respect it, you can lose to the other angle of the deck. So I really like that deck. Even though the troll ban was not the most obvious one, it was a ban that kept this deck alive while, not making it crazy good. Because we do have the issues of we only have 4 Entombs that kind of turn on Reanimate, consistently anyway. I realize Thoughtseize Force of Will also can do that to some extent, or some Bowmaster shenanigans like a mirror match. So yeah, that's kind of the problem with the deck, that you don't have this, oh, I'm producing an Atraxa or a 6/5 every turn 2, right? So perfectly balanced, yet very strong. Only 2 copies of Oopsal spells here, which is a serious downgrade for that deck compared to earlier weeks. I suspect people, put more spell bombs in their Demir deck. Let's see, what do we have here? Probably not this column. They played, bunch of cards like Lion Sash and Fairy Macaques and Surgicals and stuff in their mono white deck. Lands, we know what they can do with Crop Rotation, Bazooka Box. Same with Knight. These control decks played Endurance. These blue Penner decks played Soul Guide Lantern, right? So a lot of more resistance than usual. I have been searching for more people willing to put that main deck Graveyard Hate, not, run Torment Crypt in your whatever deck, but, play decks where you can free roll some stuff in without it hurting too much. And then the fast Reanimator deck here to round out the column. So next column is the Tempo column, which is starting to be like the default best deck, or the default, spike option in Legacy. I played it in one of the challenges and did well with it. It's a deck I can recommend if you like taking minigame actions and have them all matter to some extent. So it's like even the small stuff can punish you and you kind of like living that life. Previous Delver, I would say. We still have the Grixis version here, going slightly bigger, bit better removal, and of course the Pyroblast to get a leg up in the Pseudomere at the cost of a little bit worse mana base. But as you can see here, not a Blood Moon in sight, so just might be the perfect time to play Grixis. We still have a player here sticking to Teamer, the same player with a double top 8. Always love to see it. I'm not too big on the Questing Druid version these days. I think you get outclassed a lot in the black Days Mirror. And I just think Core Steel Cutter is a better choice. 1 copy of Cutter. Let's see how it goes for that deck. Here's the combo column, which is always interesting to see, because it actually turns out people can win with whatever combo deck is available, which is kind of cool. The biggest one I want to talk about is the Paradoxical Outcome deck. It even ended up winning a challenge. That's why I have a foil copy here. Sorry about that. So this Paradoxical Outcome deck is basically a explosive combo deck that can also play Force of Will. Whether you think that's reliable or not, I mean, who knows? We have Sneak Attack here, mainly powered by the printing of Stock Up, still doing just fine. Sneak Attack is a deck that can prey on some strategies like, you know, Death and Taxes, lands, where not too many of their cards are relevant, so their Sneak Attack deck kind of has free reigns. Then we have a more classic deck here, Infernal Tutor, at 4 copies, you know, ad nauseum type of deck. Looked pretty cool to me. Doomsday makes an appearance. It's a deck that can do well in a very few people's hands, and it's going to be, you know, sometimes we have 0, sometimes we have 1, sometimes we have 2, and maybe we've even had 3 when it's been really wild here on Metagame Monday. Cool niche deck for sure. Breakfast is trending that way as well, which is something that I am not sure about. I think Breakfast is awesome, but I also think it's going to be very hard to play against a ton of, you know, Bowmaster, Push, Thoughtseize decks. So maybe that's why we need to call Johan Larsson to get him to put some sense into people. Creative Technique, Mystic Forge, especially Mystic Forge, is a deck that I like a lot, especially when 0 Null Rods are seen play, or very close to it anyway. Creative Technique, pretty cool. We've seen it here before. It's mainly just a combo deck that, yeah, will win the game if given enough time, but is somewhat weak to stuff like, you know, Blood Moon, Wasteland, and stuff in the meantime. So not any world beater that's going to take over the format or anything, just a cool way to win games. Now, the other vials here represent Death and Taxes. Death and Taxes is a deck that, for some reason, I played it a lot 15 years ago, and these days it's a deck that's always going to be a tough and scary prospect to face for the decks that I like to play. This deck has a great late game. This deck is resilient to mana disruption, and this deck just pound for pound grinds out the opposition. So I really like this. If you think you have the wiggle room, you can compensate against the graveyard decks easily with sideboarding, and the challenging part are going to be these decks. Nothing new under the sun there. I've mentioned that on other weeks as well. But I do love this deck into a format with more and more like Kaito type strategies. Then we have a couple of good finishes here for Dark Depth strategies. A couple of lands here, lands even taking down a challenge. That was the one I split with in the finals. I was lucky to beat the player in, I believe, round 5 of the Swiss. That list looks very cool. 4-offs all the way through, very consistent on finding the combo. Playing Malevolent Rumble is another consistency card, the Green Ponder as I call it. Then we see Green-White Depths here, which is kind of a funny one because there's plenty of chatter where it's like, why would you ever cast Knight of the Reliquary when you can cast Nadu, right? So it's just cool to see that we had, let's see, 4 copies of Nadu, 4 copies of Knight of the Reliquary here. That's just kind of ironic. Always cool to see that deck. It has so much play to it, and it's easy for the opponent to make a mistake against it, which is a very powerful tool to have. If you, oh, I didn't know they had that land in the mana base, and you lose to some Reclaimer or Knight or Crop Rotation activation, right? Now, it's time to get excited here. 3 copies of Leyline Binding out of 4 or 5 color Beanstalk. So, funnily enough, the printing of Rakshas's Bargain got people to play some Sultai for a while. It was actually a, I don't know, 12% deck or 14% deck week 1. But now that's not really the case. But this version, 60-card version, is incorporating some copies of that card. You also want to dip into black because Orcus Bowmasters is your nemesis. So if you can get your own, that's just good deck building because you might need black mana anyway because of your Leyline Bindings on a discount. So I really like this this deck, and I might revisit it, but let's see. It's also a matter of you know, time commitment, etc. for me. But really awesome to see control on here, and especially the fact I talked about the lack of mono red earlier. So you can just play this 5-color control deck and without getting super punished, aside from, you know, Wasteland, a little bit of inconsistency. But you're not getting Blood Moon, which is just a very good thing to be true when you're considering signing up with a deck like this. Last up here is Mono Blue Painter. The red version has been the most popular for a while, but now the blue one got some nice finishes. I still think this deck is awesome, and I will revisit it in the future, especially if you don't face any hate, and you can have it as a, let's say, niche in the, you know, outskirts of the metagame type of deck. But if this is a 10% deck, people will overcompensate and just bury you with Meltdowns and Null Rods and Collector Roof and stuff like that. But I actually like it as a niche player here. Then you're going to face no hate. Your sagas are surviving more often with the no blood moons in the mix, and you can just grind away at the opposition with a bunch of card draw between, you know, stock up Thoughtcasts and the grindy wizards, Emery and Tameo. I will say it's a bit annoying with that Bowmasters is pretty effective against you, so maybe we don't pick this deck up quite yet, but we can certainly look at it in the future. All right, that's the 40 decks covered here. So what about a trend or two? I will say the card Hydroblast is not exactly getting better by the minute. No red Painter, no red Prison. You can argue the first copy is okay against Grixis, not that much Cutter, and Temur Delver combined. A little bit of sneak attack, so at least that's something. You get a little mileage out of that one. That's just a card that I have on my watch list. I also always have Consigned to Memory on my watch list. I think for now it's a 0 or 1 copy card out of my blue decks. So I think this is pretty cool to see. Some endurance decks, Crop Rotation, Bajuka Bog, endurance over here. The white anti-graveyard cards we talked about getting played in mono white. More and more of these blue-black X decks adopting, well, I guess, welcoming back Nihil Spellbomb, and just overall people taking the top of the metagame seriously. That's exactly what I want to see, and that's exactly why I research here, because I want to be a step ahead of that and not a step behind and look at my Mishra's Bauble and wish it was a Nihil Spellbomb. So let's try and monitor that for the future as well. I think that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are enjoying Legacy. I sure am, and I guess that goes without saying after crushing a lot on the weekend. So I want to thank you so much for your support during this time. I notice it, and I think it's awesome. And with that being said, I hope to see you back tomorrow for more sweet Legacy action. Thanks so much, guys.